Hi, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Game Day Central Extra. Alongside EJ Smith, I'm Olivia Reiner. The Eagles are underway in their preparation for the NFC Championship game this upcoming Sunday against the Washington Commanders. EJ, the Eagles are currently navigating several injuries that came out of last Sunday's divisional round game against the Los Angeles Rams. One of them being to Quinyon Mitchell, who came out in the first quarter after he suffered a shoulder injury, wasn't able to return to action. However, he was back in the mix on Wednesday as the Eagles held a walkthrough. Their estimated injury report said that he was a limited participant. So with the Eagles getting set to practice on Thursday, how meaningful is it that it looks like Mitchell is going to be available to go up against, Terry McLaurin and the Washington Commanders receivers in their third matchup of the season?
Yeah, I think that's one of the key matchups to the game. So if he's available, it will be a big boost for the Eagles secondary. Isaiah Rodgers played reasonably well against the Rams, I would say. He gave up a couple of explosives, and watching those back, you can't really fault his positioning all that much. He was in good position for a lot of those deep targets. I think his ball, maybe his ball production wasn't quite there. You have to be able to make plays on the ball. Being there is only half of the battle. And I think that's kind of a testament to what Quinyon Mitchell brings to this Eagles defense. It's crazy to think, a few months ago, we were not really sure what to expect from him as a rookie cornerback because he has been so rock solid for the team throughout the season. So obviously in the first matchup, he took on the brunt of the coverage snaps against Terry McLaurin. He held him to just one catch on 2 targets for 10 yards. That is about as dominant a performance as you're going to get from any cornerback in the NFL against a wide receiver like Terry McLaurin. It was a little bit shakier in the second matchup, in Washington. He gave up 5 catches for 60 yards, and he gave up that deep touchdown to Terry McLaurin. That was most of Terry McLaurin's production against Quinyon Mitchell. So, obviously he was a little bit up and down in the second matchup, but I still think just because of the framework of what the Eagles defense, what they want to be able to do, having Quinyon Mitchell as kind of that chess piece who can match up against Terry McLaurin, who could even honestly probably follow Terry McLaurin if they needed him to do something like that, whether it's in the slot or, wherever else. I think having that versatility and having that ability to match up with him, I think that is going to be huge for the Eagles secondary. So, transitioning to probably an even more important injury for you, Olivia, Jalen Hurts was limited. He was listed as limited in the Eagles walkthrough yesterday. It's an estimation. I think it's important to note. So, this is what the team would have expected him to be if they did practice. I think we'll learn more as the week progresses about this knee injury that he suffered against the Rams. I'm curious for you, what's the biggest concern for Jalen Hurts and the Eagles offense if he isn't quite 100%?
Yeah, EJ, if I'm the Eagles, I'm concerned about Jalen Hurts' mobility and his ability to be as dominant on the ground in the quarterback run game as he typically is. And we saw just how valuable he is in that facet of the game this past weekend against the Los Angeles Rams, where he ripped off a 44-yard explosive touchdown on the ground to kick off the scoring in the first quarter. That is part of Hurts' game, that zone read game where he was able to pull the ball and take off. And that is such an important aspect of the Eagles offense, especially going into this matchup against the Washington Commanders. The Eagles don't have to think very hard to imagine what this game could potentially look like if they had a less agile quarterback leading the group, because we saw what happened the last time the Eagles faced off against the Commanders in Week 16 when Hurts went down due to a concussion in the first quarter and Kenny Pickett took over. We saw how the Washington Commanders responded to Hurts' absence, loading up the box to stop Saquon Barkley because the offense became a little more one-dimensional, and they had a lot of success in limiting him. Granted, I think part of that, the Eagles just simply didn't execute up front in blocking for him. But if Hurts isn't able to add that dynamic element to the offense and to force off opposing defenses to account for him as well, the Eagles become a little bit less multidimensional. So I think it's going to be important for Hurts to be as healthy as humanly possible. Obviously, as you mentioned, he was not, the Eagles did not practice on Wednesday, so perhaps a little bit of time for him to recover the knee as he gets set for practice on Thursday and then on Friday and ultimately the game on Sunday. So we will see just how mobile and fully healthy he is come Sunday's game against the Washington Commanders. Now, EJ, we also got a list today of the finalists for the AP awards this year. There's lots of deserving players out there, lots of deserving coaches, quite a few Eagles also receiving nominations for some of these awards. If there was one player or coach that you think is most likely to win their respective award on the Eagles, who would it be?
Well, I'm glad you said coach there because I'm going to go with most deserving here. I feel like Vic Fangio has a very strong case to be named the assistant coach of the year in the NFL this season. I feel like, I should say it's like a very loaded group. There's Joe Brady from the Buffalo Bills, Brian Flores from the Vikings, and then you have each of the Detroit Lions former coordinators, Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn there. I think that Ben Johnson's probably the trendy one when you think about how dominant that Lions offense was all year, how creative their play calling has been. But honestly, you have to keep in mind, like the Lions offense has been, more or less intact for the last couple of years. They've been a group that has had a few years together. I think that should be taken into account. Like you look at the turnaround from the Eagles defense that Vic Fangio has been able to orchestrate. I think that really speaks volumes even beyond the other coaches in this field. So, I pulled some of the stats here. Like the Eagles were ranked 26th in yards allowed last year, 30th in points allowed, and 31st in third down efficiency last year. They're one of the worst defenses in the NFL. This year, they've been first in yards allowed, second in points allowed, and third in third down efficiency. So I think that turnaround alone, obviously there are some different players. We talked about Quinyon Mitchell earlier. They've had a lot of big name additions, or not big name additions, but just big additions that have kind of helped turn this defense around. But I think you really can't understate Vic Fangio's influence on this group. And I do. I think that makes him probably the most deserving in that field for the assistant coach of the year award. So that's my pick. I'm curious who your pick would be. The coaches are gone, so now you have to go with a player. The Eagles had a handful of players who were nominated for awards. Who do you think has the strongest case for this, most deserving for one of those awards?
I'm going to pick Saquon Barkley, but perhaps not for the award that most people would like to see him win, which is the NFL's most valuable player. I think that has just become so much of a quarterback award to this point that perhaps he isn't going to be the front runner. Perhaps we'll see someone like Lamar Jackson or Josh Allen win that. We'll see. But I think if I had to pick another award, it's the only other award that he is up for, which is Offensive Player of the Year. He's not the only player nominated, of course, for that. Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, Derrick Henry, and Lamar Jackson are also on the ballot. But I think Saquon is probably the best non-quarterback offensive player that we have seen play this year. And plus, we also have seen that running backs have had a good deal of success in recent history in terms of their odds at winning that award. We saw Christian McCaffrey win it just last season. And then we also saw Derrick Henry in 2020 come away with that award. And when you look at what Barkley has been able to do this season compared to what McCaffrey and Henry have done the years that they won it, Barkley is right up there. And if anything, he has outperformed them in several regards. We saw Barkley in total amass 2,283 all-purpose yards this season. Of course, most of that is bolstered by his dominance on the ground. 2,005 rushing yards, became the 9th player in NFL history to post over 2,000 rushing yards this season. Of course, joining Derrick Henry in 2020, who had just a few more rushing yards, 2,027 rushing yards, but not as many receiving yards, so had fewer all-purpose yards in total. McCaffrey having even less. So all in all, I would say that Barkley is probably most likely to win that Offensive Player of the Year award if he is not able to come away with that MVP. As we know, again, it's tend to become a quarterback's award, but we'll see exactly how it all shakes out once those the awards are finally handed out. All right, everyone, that is going to do it for us for Game Day Central Extra. Thanks so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time.